John Hackman, the immortal icon of Hollywood, passed away peacefully, without a last word. No suspects, no blood-soaked scene, no signs of foul play yet. All clues vanish in the desert. Betsy Arakawa, the only woman who knew the truth, has followed her too. Husband, accidental tragedy, or clandestine elimination. Every breath, every footprint Hackman left on the sand now turns to ash of rumor, sophisticated poisoning, invisible killers, or the dark hand behind the secret Oscar meetings. The entire Hollywood is having its breathe. The truth is bleeding under the New Mexico desert. Hackman's departure, something greater than a funeral, is the start chapter of the darkest history that even Hollywood is reluctant to say. Los Terros, a small village in the middle of the New Mexico desert, has been long famous as refuge for souls who desire to escape the limelight, and for John Hackman, a living legend who won the Oscar twice. Podium. This was the final stop on the long journey of a man weary of camera flashes and curious eyes. He and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, chose this corner of the desert to make it into their sanctuary, where no Hollywood footprints can encroach on. Since the 2010s, John Hackman had effectively vanished from upper newspapers, declining interviews, turning down new projects, and devoting all his time to Betsy, the quiet woman, who had remained behind him since their marriage. Their two-story wooden house, with windows gazing over unlimited arid grasslands, turned into impassable fortress. No guards, no surveillance cameras, no high concealment fences. The only thing between the outside world and their inner life was absolute silence. A silence, powerful, sufficient to consume all rumor relating them. The locals of Los Cerros hardly saw John Hackman on the few occasions he stopped by the local shop. He would offer a brief hello and quietly left. Betsy was the same. They lived like two shadows, passing one another's lives in quiet, without any sound, but this very perfect tranquility became an endless void when authorities discovered they had both passed away within very home that had shielded them from the world outside. No indication of forced entry, not was a single window or door. Damaged no indication of struggle or resistance. John Hackman's body was found on his wooden seat by the lounge room window in which he sat reading. Betsy lagged a few steps behind her rested head on the armrest, as though she had slept only off their little dog, a faithful friend, lie submissively at their feet, as if everything was just a peaceful afternoon longer than expected. The air within the house was devoid of any unusual odors. The furniture remained untouched. There was no commotion, as if the house had been enveloped in a veil of absolute stillness. Freezing time at the end. What baffled the researchers was the chilling naturalness of the scene. No traces, no external forces. Nothing but John, Betsy, and their small dog, as still as the life they had led. The Santa Fe police called it an unexplained scene. Early theories of break-ins or accidents were simultaneously dismissed. There was no external force used on Betsy's bodies or genes they left unspoken, as if the silence of Losos had swept them away gently without warning, in spite of never having so scary, because behind that absolute peace, a mystery awaited unraveling, and by virtue of the initial rumors circulating, Santa Fe, Loser Rios, was no longer as quiet as ever. Stories of John Hackman and Betsy Arakawa being among their small wooden house in Los Cerros did not take long to escape the arid desert's draw boundaries from Santa Fe. First rumors began spreading on the desert winds blowing towards roadside cafes. old newspaper sellers, and weekend bazaars where men used to holler stories. But now the name they whispered was not to a stranger, but of John Hackman, the one-time star, made everyone in Hollywood tip its hat. No one does know exactly where the initial rumor began. It could quite possibly have been from mouth of a medical legal examiner leaving the scene, or from a neighbor who, just so happened, glances at police lights in the window. But when the words first were spoken, they carried the power of the desert in silence, but unstoppable amid the arid landscape and the biting New Mexico winds. The first three theories were put forward: murder, intrusion, or gas accident. To those who had lived long enough in Santa Fe, or Los Chilos, the concept of deadly desert mysteries was never foreign. Since the 1970s, New Mexico had become a land identified with unexplained disappearances. Abandoned homes departed midway due to the owners suddenly disappeared. Bodies discovered without a one wound yet, with eyes as full with terror. This arid land, by its nature, kept such tales nobody wanted to remember. So, when John Hackman's name was mentioned in that case, the rumors soon became into a news storm. Was John Hackman killed in his home? The headline first appeared on a small-sized blog, but spread quickly when big newspapers like TMZ People and even the New York Times got involved. Who could believe who is more than 90 years of age would be the center of such a truth-seeking sot? Santa Fe was not unfamiliar with media, but the fact that reporters this time had a completely different feeling no longer. Were they travel articles that featured local restaurants or picturesque landscapes, but news reports tinged with intrigue? Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and their beloved dog, 3 lives left behind, in a home without evidence of intruder, no evidence of violence, no cries for assistance. The Santa Fe police were forced to hold their inaugural press conference that afternoon. In the incessant bursts of light, the police representative stood behind the wooden podium, his voice firm but calm, but no signs of forced entry, no visible injuries, no outside trauma. The info was as succinct as a knife, slicing through all theory. But that same firmness brought people suspicious if no one broke in. No one hurt them. How could Jean and Betsy, 2 healthy individuals living peacefully in that serene place, have passed away? So, coincidentally, the rumors grew. Some spoke of an invisible intruder who specialized in breaking into desert homes with no trace. Others described curses that took hold on the land of Los Cerros, once a ritual meeting place no one ventured to name. And then the theory of silently leaking gas, killing each life in silence, was also employed as the most sensible answer. So far, whatever the theory, no one would contest with Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, 2 people who had spent their lives avoiding the din and gossip of society, had inadvertently turned into the center of an unstoppable rumor storm in the endless desert of New Mexico. Whispers clung to echo, as if someone or something never departed. As the initial hypotheses of a break-in or murder subsided, the most plausible explanation offered was toxic gas, i.e., carbon monoxide. The invisible killer, which had captured the lives of many residents in rural areas like Losos. It was a description that everyone nodded at: a silent leak in silence, occupying every room, engulfing John Hackman, Betsy Arawa, and her small dog in eternal sleep, without a cry for rescue, without a trace of stalker struggle or panic of the Santa Fe Police Department's investigation team, and environmental experts were called. In the most advanced gas detection devices were taken to G. Hackman's small wooden scanning in all directions, from the gas stove heating system to hot water pipes. They fully examined the backup generator, a common cause of carbon monoxide poisoning in remote rural areas. But strangely, all was close to perfect. The gas stove, the primary suspect, had only had a minuscule leakage at gas supply pipe fitting. But the leaked gas was negligible, far from enough to be dangerous or heap in the open part of the Hackman's cozy kitchen. The heating system was also comprehensively studied, all pipes scanned with thermal cameras to find any cracks, which may lead toxic gas into the home. The consequence, nothing abnormal. All equipment complied with installation criteria and frequent inspections. Minor defects in the hot water pipes and gas connection were completely independent of the risk of carbon monoxide. The true shock came late in the afternoon. When the first autopsy report was sent to the chief investigator's office, zero carbon footprint monoxide was in Gene Hackman's, or Betsy Arakawa's, body's blood samples, lung fluid, brain tissue. All were clean, without any sign of gas, poisoning. The most relied upon theory, the explanation that everyone held on to, suddenly collapsed that night. A press release from the government of New Mexico was released without carbon monoxide, had no environmental toxins, found it toxic to human concentrations health. This report stoked the already seething gossip on social media, if not gas. Then what happened in that small house in the desert? New theories soon emerged. Had they have been poisoned by another potent toxin, so sophisticated that it evaded traditional tests? Or was it a slow-acting poison, slowly ingested through food or water, that had killed them both simultaneously, like a preordained curse? Even mentioned biological or chemical toxins applied at high-level assassinations that can self-destruction, and on completion, their mission, leaving the scene clean as a fresh sheet of paper from Los Celos, where the setting sun painted the distant Rocky Mountains red to every conspiracy blog. People always asked if carbon monoxide wasn't there. Then what was that question? Like a new curse haunted public opinion during the subsequent days as all theories became more outlandish and the truth was buried somewhere in the desert winds of silence. John Hackman was a name that did not need introduction. He was something greater than an actor, but a living legend, a symbol of a Hollywood rich in artistry, where true talent could transcend glitzy gimmicks, from The French Connection to Unforgiven. Every one of Hackman's performances was etched into the public consciousness, but underneath the Oscars' sheen were layers of heavy secrets that few were prepared to touch in the 70s and 80s, when Hackman was pinnacle of fame. He was also a testament to the dark underbelly of Hollywood that the media never penetrated. It was a period of secretive parties, backstage deals, and secrets that were never to be informed. That it was reported that Hackman, with his discerning intelligence and perceptive eyes that perceived no detail, knew too much of behind-the-scenes bribes for favors and even strange disappearances that were never made public. When accounts of Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's surprise passing dominated the headline, some of his former colleagues were reached out to discuss their emotions, but instead of condolences or nostalgic recollections, most chose silence. Those who stood shoulder to shoulder alongside Hackman on traditional projects, directors who considered him a golden collaborator, all refused to comment. This collective silence sends shivers down the public spine. From here, a new theory emerged. Was Hackman not only avoiding the Hollywood spotlight on opting to reside in seclusion in New Mexico. Could it be that the secrets he kept burdened him, forcing him to leave the film capital before the shadows of old discovered him? Some conspiracy websites even spoke of Hollywood, curse a secret list of stars who knew too much and who passed away under mysterious conditions. Hackman, with everything he had seen, whether he became the newest casualty of that curse when the secrets of the past were never decoded, and the former underground forces still silently existed. John Hackman's departure became an enigmatic link between the glamorous light and the shadows of power, where the truth is always screened behind the velvet curtains of the film capital. If John Hackman were the glow of Hollywood personified and shadows, then Betsy Arakawa was his complete in contrast to that day. She'd become Gene's partner. Betsy accepted a withdrawal from the limelight, living in quiet companionship of a shadow, but the farther she withdrew, the more mysterious that shadow turned into. Betsy Arakawa was once a great pianist, but since after marrying Hackman, she had well-nigh disappeared. Out of the public eye, old friends recalled only a reserved, gentle Betsy, never with a smile to say her legendary husband. But behind those smiles, there existed a sense of tension that only very few close friends actually saw. Some months prior to them being at the home of LWIO's Betsy, trusted an old friend over the phone that she had the feeling of being watched, mysterious noises at midnight, enigmatic, unknown senders, unencrypted messages, and a persistent, groundless worry plagued her daily life. But once instructed to have done so to the police, Betsy just smiled faintly. I'm just being silly. Even more strange was an anonymous tip to the Santa Fe Police Department. Within mere hours of the news of the incident was released a middle-aged woman's voice, soft and shaking, left a single piece of information. Betsy wrote a letter to a friend in California, was her last confession, but that letter was never found. From here, speculations were made. Some said Betsy had been engaged in a complicated financial relationship prior to marrying Hackman, and she had tried to hide that history from 3 decades. There were also rumors of covert affairs with Betsy and certain powerful individuals who may be the real reason behind her unjustified fears. Betsy Arakawa, the woman behind John Hackman's stage curtain, might be the last of all keys, mysteries, but now she had stepped into a realm of silence, taking her secrets with her out into the New Mexico desert night, where everything is covered up. The sands of time, the day Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's body were found. The New Mexico desert seemed to be holding its breath, not due to the stifling heat or the sandstorm blowing over the trails, but because of an undefined feeling penetrating the atmosphere. A legend had passed away here, but what remained behind was not just a legacy of glory, but a mystery as vast as desert's infinite horizon. When the earlier forensic reports had been released, all things became even more confusing. No external force signs, no obvious injuries, without any evidence of breakage at the house of Hackman, gas carbon monoxide, or other commonplace poisons. All were eliminated. Every line of investigation that appeared to point to the truth vanished like desert mirages within New Mexico's sun. After weeks of Santa Fe investigation, police had to concede that they found none definitive cause of John Hackman's death, and his wife. It was also a case, but it seemed even law enforcement had accepted that there were some mysteries beyond field of science or conventional logic. The Hackman family chose silence. They declined all interview invitations, all offers of cooperation from the press. Those around Gene Hackman in previous times, from former colleagues to neighbors in New Mexico, had a shared silence. Hollywood, which had already commemorated him being a living legend, now appeared to deliberately not naming G. Hackman in memorial BR broadcasts. His death somehow became a strange taboo. In that void, social media exploded, outlandish theories and conspiracy theories developed, growing denser by the day. Some claimed Gan and Betsy were victims of a perfectly orchestrated assassination, a flawless stage suicide. Others believed they has been poisoned slowly over months with a potent chemical designed to scatter after completing its work, some forms even going further, pointing the incident was linked to secret organizations that had dominated Hollywood for decades, forces that Gian Hackman had inadvertently or intentionally encountered. Each disjointed piece of Betsy's silent fears, the strange, anonymous calls to the eerie silence of those who knew Hackman, all interconnected, creating an incomplete but haunting image. John Hackman's death was not merely the death of a star. It was the genesis of a dark legend, an unsolved enigma in which the ultimate glimmer of Hollywood's glory faded into the New Mexico dust, having millions of questions suspended in the desert air. Its breath held in suspense for no answer actually recalls the exact place where John Hackman's home became a part mysterious lore of Losos. But because the time since his and Betsy Arakawa's bodies were found, the space was suddenly overwhelmed with an uncommon stillness, a stillness that was not merely the presence of no one, but the feeling of a space that had remained stationary, waiting for something too immense, too terrifying, and then never heard the answer. Neighbors, residents, scattered throughout this rugged desert landscape, started to whisper to each other about what they had observed in the recent days beforehand. All came to illuminating an elderly couple living nearly a mile from Hackman's house. Verified they saw unusual blue light flashing via windows on the second floor. Initially believed it was just car headlights of the path behind. But the light didn't move, didn't change. It remained still, as if illuminating a silent ceremony that lasted almost 10 minutes before abruptly going out. A horse rancher who had at times supplied hay to the Hackman house recalled having several days before the police arrived. He met Betsy, standing on the porch. Her eyes were glued to the distant desert, with an unusually empty look. She did not respond to his greet encounter, just remained there, as if listening to a sound no other human would listen to. Santa Fe police, after their initial official statements, also quietly withdrew from the case. There were no more updates, no more press releases after the temporary closure of the case only made the silence more frightening. The Hackman family refused all who are in touch and those around them to Gene Hackman for life. Suddenly fell silent, as though they had heard something hidden, warning on internet forums, from Reddit to blog, focusing on Hollywood conspiracy theories. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were no longer the only couple of Los Carrillos. They were the new symbol of a shadowy Hollywood in which the stage lights never shone. Theories about the price of knowing too much shrouded Hackman's presence within a dark mist, where his roles, Oscar statues, and past accolades were now a Ephra Ile mask, veiling the mystery beneath John Hackman's house. Remains vacant till date, with no one courageous enough to go, not for sale, not for rent, and no one dares to destroy it as if it were part of the legend itself. Every night, when the desert wind howls along empty window frames, whispers of untold secrets echo from somewhere far away. And Gene Hackman, despite having left this world, his story as regards the of being too close to truth will continue to haunt the New Mexico darkness beneath the surface of silence and empty bureaucratic announcements of the Santa Fe police. There are still disjointed pieces that always fall short, included the unknown call at 2:37 a.m., around 48 hours before Hackman and Betsy's body was discovered. The emergency switchboard had an interrupted call at the Hackman's landline. A woman's whisper was only heard, 5 words they found too suddenly. Late, the call was disconnected. Police later verified. Betsy placed the call, but was able to explain why the call was not continued or who they were in that statement. The empty safe. Hackman's. There was a large safe, one that did not appear in any earlier inventory of assets. The safe door was wide open, empty inside. No one had an idea. Hackman had stayed there, and there were no signs for forced entry. The manuscript unfinished, a handwritten manuscript whose pages were dispersed, situated in the basement where Hackman seldom went through the manuscript's material, comprised of fragmented recollections of Hollywood, of the 70s and 80s, interspersed with shadowy names. The club, the Desert Red Folder meeting. As it looked, Hackman had written this secret memoir for himself, or for the courageous one to read. The remainder manuscript abruptly ceased with a sentence. If they discover no one overcomes the deaths of G. Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, not only mark the end of 2 lives, but also a new chapter in the dark legends of Hollywood. The Hollywood Secret Society. After the accident, many conspiracy boards suspected Hackman had unwittingly got into an undercover society of film tycoons and politicians. Since the post-Watergate years, he were able to escape, but bore secrets which were never to be revealed, instilling fear of at least 3 of Hackman's close friends, like a director with whom he worked on Mississippi. Burning left quietly Los Angeles after the police release of Closure Case. None of them were willing to be interviewed, despite being shown 6-figure sums up the haunted house to date. Those who have visited the Hackman House location claim to hear whispers at dawn, the voice of Betsy or Hackman himself, echoing from the desert, fragmented, unintelligible phrases, but always using just one phrase: not safe. Here, John Hackman's legacy is not only Oscar statues or iconic roles, it is also shadow looms over Hollywood, where the truth is concealed behind the New Mexico desert sand, where not everyone who knows too much can survive to recount tale. Gene Hackman passed away in silence, but the consequences of the incident spread like a sandstorm, swallowing Hollywood. Betsy Arakawa, last witness, also followed as a chilling message. Those who know too much have nowhere to go. Not by accident, not by suicide. This is the price of truth, where the stage lights never shine.